One human life traded for the chance to save 1,000 others. Is that justice, or will it still be a crime? Imagine you walk into a pawn shop. You're selling your last valuables. Increasingly desperate, you calculate the consequences. What if one murder could free you from poverty, help finish your education, support your family, and fund 1,000 good deeds? One life for a chance to change everything. Would you do it? Over 150 years ago, Fyodor Dostoevsky took these questions up in what would become one of the best-known works of Russian literature, Crime and Punishment. The novel tells the story of Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov, a young law student in St. Petersburg who lives in abject poverty. Raskolnikov has been sitting in his tiny apartment, isolating himself from the world and letting a dangerous idea ferment in his brain. He wrote an article proposing that humanity is divided into two categories. First, the ordinary, the masses, the sheep. They must follow the law. Then, the extraordinary, the Napoleons, the great men. These people move history forward, and because they move history, they have a right, no, a duty, to step over the law, to kill, if necessary, for the greater good. So Raskolnikov asks himself the fatal question: am I a Napoleon, or am I a louse? At this point, Raskolnikov is out of funds. He sells the last of his valuables to a bitter and cruel pawnbroker. Letters from his rural home only add to the distress. He realizes just how much his mother and sister have sacrificed for his success. So he decides to test his theory. He goes to the elderly pawnbroker's apartment, raises the axe, and kills her. Ideally, he should feel nothing but the satisfaction of a job well done, right? But then, chaos strikes. The sister walks in, Lizaveta, innocent, kind, pregnant. Raskolnikov panics and kills her too. And right there, the equation breaks. Dostoevsky is showing us the first major lesson. Life is not a spreadsheet. You cannot calculate the value of a human soul. And when you try to play God with logic, you invite the devil in with chaos. Raskolnikov tries to suppress his humanity to become the Superman, but his humanity fights back. He doesn't feel like Napoleon. Instead, his mind begins to fracture, paranoid. He thinks everyone knows. He faints when people mention the murder. He cuts off his own family because he feels he can no longer breathe the same air as innocent people. He thought he killed a cruel old woman, but as he later confesses, "I killed myself, not that old creature. There, once and for all, I did away with myself." To save Raskolnikov or to damn him? Dostoevsky gives him two paths to follow, represented by two characters in the book. One, Svidrigailov. Svidrigailov is Raskolnikov's dark mirror. He is a wealthy predator who believes that since there is no God and no objective morality, he can do whatever he wants. He uses people. He abuses them. He feels no guilt. Raskolnikov looks at him and sees the endpoint of his own philosophy. If you truly step over morality, you don't become a hero, you become a monster. Svidrigailov ends up empty, bored, and ultimately destroys himself. That is the path of nihilism, the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. 2. Sonia. Sonia is the light. She is a prostitute, but not by choice. She sells her body to keep her family alive. Unlike Raskolnikov, she does not justify harm by appealing to future good. She accepts suffering herself instead of passing it on to others. She is the lowest of the low in society's eyes, yet she possesses the highest moral spirit. She believes in God, but her importance is not religious doctrine. It is practical. She accepts that life is unfair and painful, and she does not try to escape that pain through ideology or violence. Raskolnikov believes suffering can be avoided if the right person commits the right crime. Sonia believes suffering is unavoidable, and the moral question is who carries it. Although the novel deals heavily with morality, it never lectures the reader. Each character feels real, with their own voice, motivations, and logic. One of the most striking things about Crime and Punishment is that it remains gripping even though the murder happens early in the story. The crime is clear from the beginning. What matters is not what Raskolnikov did, but what it does to him. Through the psychological and social consequences that follow, Dostoevsky reveals the true meaning of punishment and the difficult possibility of redemption. When Raskolnikov confesses to Sonia, he expects judgment. Instead, she weeps for him. She tells him, "Go at once, this very minute, stand at the crossroads, bow down, first kiss the earth which you have defiled, and then bow down to all the world and say to all men aloud, I am a murderer." She tells him to accept his suffering. So, why was Dostoevsky so obsessed with suffering? In 1849, Dostoevsky was tied to a stake, facing a firing squad. He thought he had 5 minutes left to live. At the last second, a messenger rode up, waving a white flag. The Tsar had commuted his sentence to hard labor in Siberia, where he spent 4 years in brutal conditions. When he was released in 1854, he was a changed man. He no longer trusted simple political solutions or utopian ideas. His attention turned instead to deeper questions about suffering, freedom, and the human soul. In 1864, he explored these ideas in his novel Notes from Underground, arguing that rational Western philosophies could never fully explain human behavior. People, he believed, are not purely logical. They desire contradiction, freedom, and even self-destruction. The novel ends with Raskolnikov in a Siberian prison. At first, he remains arrogant, but slowly, through suffering and Sonia's love, his ego breaks. He realizes his great man theory was a lie that nearly destroyed him, and he learns the book's final lesson. Love is greater than logic. So why read this 150-year-old Russian brick today? Because Raskolnikov isn't just a character in a book. Think about the cold corporate logic of a healthcare company denying life-saving coverage to save money. That is Raskolnikov's math. Profit is the goal. These lives are just numbers. But then, look at the reaction to Brian Thompson's assassination. We saw the internet explode with people cheering. Why? Because they decided that his death was justified for the greater good. Do you see the trap? It is the exact same logic. Whether it's a CEO maximizing profits or a gunman seeking revenge, both believe their idea gives them the right to step over a human. We see this logic in the wars consuming Ukraine and Gaza. We see leaders on all sides calculating acceptable collateral damage. We see the arithmetic of how many civilians can die to achieve a military objective. We convince ourselves that we are the Napoleons, that our cause is righteous, that our violence is justice. The moment you decide you are smart enough to decide who deserves to live and who deserves to die, you haven't become a hero. You have become the monster you claim to be fighting. True strength isn't found in your ability to justify violence with a clever argument. It is taking responsibility for your own darkness instead of projecting it onto the world. We all have the capacity for evil. The line between good and evil doesn't run between states or classes. It runs right down the middle of every human heart. Have you read Crime and Punishment? Do you see Raskolnikov's dangerous math playing out in the world right now? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe. If you want more explainers like this, here's one that strips away empty values, and another that reveals the responsibility that replaces them.